Hello and welcome to this episode of the ESG Fitness Podcast. I have the incredible Claire with me. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm also very good, thank you.
Good. Have you had a busy day?
Do you know what? All right. Like
Excellent.
I'm like weirdly like not that busy at the moment. I'm like, oh, this feels weird.
Is it nice to have a little bit of downtime though? Because usually you're back to back to back to back.
Yeah, I like being busy. Like I think I thrive on being busy, but like I even had a bit of lion this morning. Like my alarm went off at 6 and I was like, why do I need to get up? Don't have a call until 10:30. So I just went back to bed for half an hour. It was nice.
Excellent.
Yeah. I was
That's
like,
so
this
good.
week's going to be about like just being nice to myself, you know?
Yeah, I love that. Sometimes you need to have weeks like that. Just be a little bit easier on yourself. Just
Yeah.
enjoy it. And then you feel so ready to get back to it afterwards, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm excited. And I'm excited for the next intake because we sold out the early bird spaces like
Super fast.
quickest we've ever sold them out. So I'm really excited about that. And I've been spending, this is what's been quite nice about having a bit more time. Like I've been spending probably about 2 hours a day doing a bit of research, pulling together how I want to create the course. Like I've got all the structure there, but then I just kind of, at the moment, I'm just brain dumping things into certain places, and then I'm going to fill like each lesson out, and that's been a lot of fun as well. Like not feeling like, oh my god, I have to do this today because it needs to be done tomorrow, but like
Yeah.
I've got time and space to really make something that I'm really proud of. So
So
yeah,
exciting. I also think, I think you said this on your stories the other day, but it's going to be such a good round because the people who sign up in December are the people who are like, I want it. Like, I'm not waiting till January to feel good. I'm going to do something about it now because I can. And yeah, love that.
yeah, and that's our whole thing. It's like we want people that are like, fuck average. I don't want
Mm.
normal results. I don't want a mediocre life. Like I'm willing to do a little bit more. I'm willing to behave a little bit differently because I don't want to be average. They're the exact people we want to attract, which is why I always do an intake at this time of year. And that I think, loads of people talk about niche and they're like, oh, it's perimenopausal women or it's pre and postnatal or it's like busy mums or it's whatever. It's like, no, our niche is fuck average people. Like,
Yeah.
yes, we specialize in pre and postnatal. That's why we have like a midwife that actually works with us, right? That's incredible. We also do perimenopause. Like, I've done a lot of research in that area. Tony's done a lot of research in that area. We have our like specialities and expertise. We've got Maureen who focuses on binge eating, but fundamentally, like we are trying to attract a type of person. And I don't care if you're perimenopausal, if you've just had a baby, if whatever, like it doesn't really matter. It's more like that's the vibe that we want to attract.
Absolutely.
All
Love it.
right, cool. Shall we do some questions?
Let's get into the questions. So, the first one, I have been catching up on some slightly older podcasts, only from about 4 to 5 weeks ago, and there was one talking about Claire Davis having a reset with the gym and getting consistency back, and Maureen Joyce getting her steps back up. Both of these resonated with me. And although I'm in a good place currently, I have definitely gone through times of losing the love. How have you both got on and what did you do? Well, being completely transparent, I went back to the gym for the first time last week and it had been 4 weeks. And
Claire,
I
what the
know, I know, literally so unlike me. I don't really know why, but I was not prioritizing it. I was getting, I think, too stuck in to work sometimes and then not be feeling like, oh, I can't pull out of it because if I pull out of it to go to the gym, I'll lose my flow or whatever. But also definitely a kind of a feeling of I can't be bothered. And I think that's really important to talk about because that happens to everybody, even people who love going to the gym, who are personal trainers, who are coaches, whatever. Sometimes also we can't be bothered. But the thing that made me go back last week was these guys. I was doing check-ins and I was reading one of the check-ins and someone was writing that they'd been to the gym, they'd got loads of PBs, they'd really upped their weights, they were just fucking loving it, feeling super strong. And I was just like, yeah, fuck, I want to feel like that again. And I felt so inspired. And I was kind of like, what am I doing? I need to go back. And the other thing that I realized as well is that I was like, by not choosing to do the hard thing to go, I was also making a choice about my life. And it was becoming a choice about my life because it had been 4 weeks. Like, if it happens every now and again, yeah, fine. Sometimes that's the case, isn't it? But I was like, shit, it's been 4 weeks. I'm now making a choice about my lifestyle, and I don't want to be making that choice. So yeah, I just put my big girl pants on and went back, but also like just felt really inspired because of these guys.
Do you know what? The group's really inspiring me at the moment because I'll put something up on Monday. I think it was just like, what are you doing this Monday to start your week in like a fuck average way or something? And like the amount of responses and like the people that were starting their week positively, and actually like I really needed that recently. Like I don't think the group realized how much inspiration they give us as well, and actually just like being, because we're part of it, you know, like for sure, like I made it, but like I'm also part of it and I get a lot from it as well. And that is just so motivating, especially because a lot of people, and I don't think people realize how motivating it is when they're just themselves and they, you know, they're doing whatever. Maybe it's like, I don't know, they hit 10,000 steps, despite the fact that this happened, this happened, this happened. They're not feeling great at the moment and they've got these constraints. And I don't know, there was a leak in their kitchen and then they couldn't get to the work and their car broke down or whatever. And they're like, but I still got my steps in. I'm like, that's really inspiring. Like now my excuses are just like, nah, I need to go and do it as well. So I think that makes a big difference. One thing I will say, I was talking to Katie about this morning, is how much harder it is in winter. And that's not to say, because we're fuck average here, right? We're not like it's a good excuse not to do it because it's harder in winter. It's just a fact. Like it is harder in winter. You still have to do it, but it's harder. And I think like acknowledging that's quite useful for people as well, because some people are just like, why is it so much harder? Am I doing something wrong, or is something inherently changed? But it's harder to stay in shape in winter.
Yeah, 100%. It's and like nothing's perfect all the time. There will always be periods of your life or periods of the year where you don't feel it as much as others. But yeah, I think winter's definitely a big one because you don't just have like the like environmental stuff. So the fact that it's darker earlier and it's going to be raining more and all of that sort of thing. But lots of people really struggle in the winter with their mental health. Like I know I find winter super difficult. I sometimes wonder if I have that sad
Sad.
thing. Um, and yeah, it's just, but actually doing the things, going to the gym, lifting heavy weights, making myself feel strong, eating well, that's actually going to help me more than giving into that feeling of like, oh, this is so difficult.
Well, also, it's the time, and this is an annoying just fact of life, but the times when you don't want to do it are the times that you need to do it most, right? Like if you're someone who's got SAD, seasonal affective, is it seasonal affective disorder?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Anyway, basically, you're a bit sad in the winter. That's a very like brush off way to say it, but like fundamentally, you struggle more in the winter, like most people, but there are people that struggle significantly more. What would you do for your mental health? Like, what would you tell someone? You need to exercise, you need to get outside in the sunlight, you need to fuel your body well, you need to take care of yourself. And like taking care of yourself isn't lying on the couch all day or not going to the gym or deciding just to get a takeaway instead of, it might be in the moment now and again, but that would be like, as an example, like it's self-care to me at the moment to have a lie-in for 30 minutes from 6 a.m. to half six, right? That's self-care, right? But it's not for someone to be like, do you know what? I'm not good. Like someone who's never doing very much anyway, like I'm just going to sleep in all the time and I'm never going to go to the gym. I'm not going to get my steps in. I'm not going to do this. Like there is a difference, and you need to realize like the situations that people are in and the grander scheme of things. Like, hey, now and again it might be self-care to get a takeaway, but certainly not self-care to do it every night. In fact, that's kind of self-harm because you're pushing yourself further away from your goals. The other point on this is when I was saying it's so much harder in winter, I was reminded of this today because I was rewriting. Actually, no, I was writing a Substack article on kind of this time of year and why it's so hard and how to get through Christmas and actually what you should be focusing on. And one study that I just think is so interesting found that people put on almost all of their weight between October and February.
That's mad.
And then the rest of the year, most people, and this is most people, right? This is complete averages, but most people don't gain any weight. They just don't lose any. So every single year they gain weight because they put on weight between October and February. And then the rest of the year they don't lose it. So on average, you're going to be gaining weight. Now, what a lot of kind of like fitness professionals, well-meaning, will say is like, don't worry about the Christmas period. Just it's a time to enjoy yourself and let loose a little bit, and like you shouldn't be worried about it. But it's like, well, actually, what the data shows is that you're going to put on most of your weight over that festive period, right? If you're American, like, and this was done on Americans, but from like Thanksgiving until like basically the start of February, when people actually kind of pull their socks up and maybe get going again and the weather starts getting a bit brighter, that's when you should be focused. And actually, what the data suggests is the rest of the year doesn't matter as much because you're not gaining weight the rest of the year. You might not be losing very much either, but you're apparently not gaining, right? So you really need to focus on like this time of year. And the irony is that it's when most people drop off and when most people are like, do you know what? I think I'm just going to put my coaching on hold, or I'm just going to like chill out a bit. I'll start again when the summer comes or whatever. And it's like, now you're starting from such a hard position, and now actually this is when you need to be a little bit tighter. And it's not like, it's really think about it like you versus you last year, or you versus what you would normally do. Not like you have to be perfect, not even like you have to be able to do as many steps as you were doing in the summer. Like summer in London, I was doing like 25,000 steps a day with no effort whatsoever. I just wanted to be outside, and it was like it didn't get dark until like 10 p.m. So you'd go for, even if you were working late, you'd go for a nice walk around the park with your mates. Like, I live right next to Battersea. It was the easiest thing in the world to get in steps, and now it's like I'm struggling to get in 10,000 steps. But I'll still make sure that I do it. But it's significantly harder when the weather changes. But actually, it's kind of more important to be doing it.
Agree.
All right.
Next question.
Yeah.
As much as I'm definitely planning to be more mindful around alcohol consumption, especially depending on where I am in my cycle, when I do drink, I get major munchies. It's always chocolates, crisps, cheese, bread, or ice cream. This is my downfall. I think this has partly become a self-fulfilling prophecy, as I almost tell myself I can't control it, so I automatically go nuts. But do you have any tips on how to control the munchies when willpower has decreased and hunger has increased? For extra context, I live in Lisbon and the wine is amazing here, so going completely alcohol-free is never going to happen. My willpower isn't that good.
I don't think one, your willpower is that good if you really want to, right? You absolutely can stop. But the point is you don't want to because the wine's really nice in Lisbon. Great, that's fine. But like take that out of the equation. Stop telling yourself that actually you are in control. You're drinking wine because you want to drink wine. And that's fine. And it sounds like it's a fuck yes for you. You're like, the wine here is really good. It's not like you're like, oh, I just drink crap wine from the co-op at the end of the road or something. It's like you're drinking like really nice wine that you seem to really enjoy. Great. Again, with you're spot on with I think this might have become a self-fulfilling prophecy. I almost think that you're like allowing yourself to overeat or using it as a reason to overeat because you're like, well, whenever I drink, this happens and I can't control it. You can. Everyone can control their actions. Like, and take that power back because that's where the power is. Now you're saying, I can control it, but I'm not. And that's very different. And that's something that you can then change. But now you have the power. Like, I chose to overeat then. Okay, cool. Now we can change that. If you're like, I overate and there's nothing I could have done about it, okay, that's a very hard place to change from. And I don't like when people insinuate that. And I think even, and this is a slight tangent, but it's like a bit of a bugbear of mine, even sometimes when people talk about binge eating, now the definition of binge eating is like this like loss of control around food, which some people can really feel. But I even think whether that's kind of right or wrong, because realistically, you still can't, if someone had a gun to your head and was like, stop eating, you would stop eating, right? So it is still like, is it harder to control? Yes, I'm not doubting that in the slightest. But like you are still in control. And I sometimes think taking that away from people by telling, almost being like diagnosing them with a complete loss of control isn't helpful if you're asking someone to change. Like, how can you change something that you can't control? So I think the first thing to remind yourself of is especially in this situation where we're not talking about clinical binge eating, you are in control. Like you can control this, but you also might be setting up your environment in a way that makes it very hard to control. So when most people come to us and they're like, I'm really struggling with willpower, and we're like, okay, tell us about the situation. Right, well, I'll drink some wine, and then I end up just like overeating on crisps and cheese and like nibbles on the food. Right, so what you're actually telling us is you drink some wine and then you've got alcohol in your system. Obviously, you're going to have less willpower, like less self constraint. And then you've surrounded yourself with a table of really tasty food. And then you're saying you're the problem because you don't have willpower. Sorry, but anyone in that situation, literally anyone, would have that same issue. So then you need to think, can I curate that environment a little bit? Like, can I have either a very small bowl of whatever it is you want to have, or can I just like enjoy the wine in a slightly different context where there isn't food surrounding me? Or can I go in, because now and again you can't, but like you can go in with a rule for yourself, rather than hoping that you just magically won't overeat. You're like, actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have 3 olives, a little bit of this cheese that I really love, and that's it. And I'm holding myself to that. And sometimes telling other people can help as well. So you might use Claire as your someone that you're telling, but like it's even better if you're like your husband or whoever you're having wine with. That was very heteronormative of me. Maybe it's your wife, who knows? Whoever you're having wine with, you could say like, okay, I'm really going to enjoy this wine, but I'm only having this tonight because I really want to stay on track and I want to prove to myself that I can do that. Help me do it. And they'll be like, right, fine, I'm going to make sure that that's what you do. Like that, it's not, again, it's not a big deal, but it really, really helps because then you're kind of using peer pressure to your advantage because you've told somebody what you're going to do.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I don't know if I take a bit of umbrage with the words willpower. Like, I just don't really like it because I
Sorry, a
feel
bit of what?
umbrage. Is that right? Like, you
Yeah,
take
probably.
umbrage with
Let
something.
me just look that up. You continue.
I've probably just used that word in completely the wrong context, but I feel like when it's used, we often use it, and this isn't just for this person, like everybody does this. I've done it a million times in my life, but we often use it as a way to kind of like take the accountability and responsibility away from ourselves. And I definitely like 100% agree with everything Emma said, but particularly the bit about like give yourself back some of the power, the accountability and the responsibility. Like it's a choice you're making and it's absolutely okay to make that choice, but you do have a choice in it. And I think recognizing that is really important.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. And you were absolutely spot on with this, and I love it.
Excellent.
It's actually umbrage.
Umbrage.
I take a little bit of umbrage with that, which means offense, annoyance, or displeasure.
Yeah, I think it's like, yeah, it's not offense, but like just a bit of displeasure with it, because I feel like willpower is a bit of a scapegoat for people, but almost that like the term itself almost makes you believe I don't have the control over this situation, but you absolutely do.
Hmm. And that's the main thing, is just like reminding yourself of that. And
Mm.
like it's such an astute observation. That's what it is. That it's just like as soon as you say, oh, it's my willpower, and I don't have any willpower. Like also, this is quite interesting, but willpower, like the concept of willpower has been quite disproven in science, like in social science. It's not really like a lot of people say it doesn't exist. And what's interesting is that people who perceived willpower to exist found that they did, like their willpower did dissipate in studies, and people who perceived it not to exist found that it didn't. And now I can't remember the exact study that was on and what the example was, but I thought it was really interesting. It's like actually even the whole concept of it is disputed.
Yeah.
That does it even exist? And I get like the yeah, yes. I think probably what's more realistic is like the degree to which you believe that you have control. That's essentially like the realistically what willpower transpires as.
Mm. Yeah, for sure. Excellent. Next question.
Yeah.
So this one's a long one, so I've kind of just broken it down a little bit and kind of summarized it. But So my husband is a huge fan after a 6 hour road trip to Cornwall and listening to lots of the podcast. He's now doing Commit to Six with me. And this has made the 4 a.m. alarms easier and more positive to get to the gym with him doing it too. I'm prone to overeating slash then restricting due to getting fed up of never having anything quote unquote off plan and then going mad for it at the weekend and holidays. But my husband is so disciplined that he won't even consider anything indulgent, wine, cake, etc. But these are things that I see helping me to stick to this long term and making it a lifestyle change rather than keeping them forbidden and then going and then gorging on holiday. Because he's not having these, it makes me feel like I'm failing because I want them. How to navigate this? That's the first part of the question.
Okay. Well, firstly, I love that he's a fan. Hi, welcome, and welcome to Commit to Six, even though you're not fully on the program, but very happy to have you here and very happy that you're supporting your wife. Like, I think this kind of like comes back to the last question. It's sometimes easier when you've got someone else there kind of backing you as well. I would really like to see you both create some balance, and maybe you can, I mean, well, we're hopefully literally talking to him now, but he will find that it's easier long term if he includes some things that he enjoys as well. So even if you're like, right, on a weekend, we're going to go out to our favorite brunch spot, or we're going to have that really nice, I can't remember what she said that she really enjoys now, but like whatever it is, we're going to have like a bit of chocolate on a Friday
Wine
night.
and cake.
Wine and cake, you know, like something that you can really look forward to, or even you can make together or go out for together. I also think that like going out for a piece of cake or a sweet treat or something, it often makes it a lot easier because it's very hard to then overeat. You know, if you're like, we're going to go out for a nice Sunday walk and then we're going to meet, we're going to have a coffee, a nice cake, but like maybe you share two bits of cake because you both want to try it, or maybe you share one bit of cake, or, you know, whatever kind of fits for you. But it's very unlikely that you're going to massively overeat cake when you're out because you're going to have to keep buying slices, right? Which is just a little bit socially unacceptable. So you probably won't do it. But maybe you could both kind of like work together to do that, because he will find that the same thing, you know, like actually, and also what's quite eye-opening and reassuring is that when you do that and you still get results, you're like, oh, okay. And maybe he's not done that yet. Maybe that's not quite clicked for him yet. Of like, especially for a man, like this is so much easier for like your average man. He's probably dying on significantly higher calories than you. And having a piece of cake once a week with his wife is going to make absolutely fuck all difference to him. Like it's going to be a drop in the ocean. So yeah, let's encourage him to do it, even if initially he's doing it for you because he loves you and he's a good husband. There's some like little pressure for you.
Agree. I think he could definitely be encouraged. But also, like, just because he doesn't want to do it absolutely does not mean you're failing. And I think a really important part of this is that you're super self aware and you know that if you don't have any of these foods and these things you enjoy, you know that's not going to be sustainable for you. And you want to, like, you're here because you want to make this a lifestyle change. You want to make this something that you're able to continue to do to get to your goal and then stay there. So don't ever feel like you're failing because you just can't. And I think this person, yeah, is really self-aware with some of the things that she says and she does. So don't let what he's choosing to do or not do put you off what you know is right for you. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's really important. But then the
That's
second
a
part of the
very, very good
question.
point. That's the number one point. What I said is below that. Just go there first, and then yeah.
But what you said though, is important because the second part of the question is: should I advise him to eat more as he's following my target, which is 16 to 1800 calories? He's 5'11" and 87 kilos. He has high steps and does 50-minute cardio 3 times a week, but no weights yet. I will get him to sign up next time. You're all amazing, and my sister has signed up too. I'm spreading the word of how great this community is.
Oh, you're such a legend. I'm very pleased. And they will all be getting VIP treatment, of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, one, he needs to lift weights, and two, those targets are completely wrong for him, but we will set them for him when he comes in. But yeah, they're not right. Like, he's a man. He sounds like he's probably more active generally than potentially you are. He's probably got Well, maybe more or less. I don't know if he would have more lean tissue if he's not particularly resistance training, but most men do because of higher testosterone levels, more muscle mass. His energy needs are going to be high. So it's not like, look, if he's got fat to lose, it's not like he's going to die eating 1600 to 1800 calories. It's just, it's quite a big deficit for him. And he doesn't need to be in such a big deficit, and he might find it quite hard to stick to. Um, so yeah, I would be, especially if he's not resistance training, it's like you're in a big deficit, not resistance training. You're probably going to lose a fair amount of lean tissue as well as fat, which isn't what we want. And I'm sure you want like a sexy lean husband, not like a little skinny fat husband.
And therefore, because of that, he can definitely afford to have the odd glass of wine and the odd piece of cake.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
100%.
And then I guess like it should be what, if they're your like puck, yes. Like what I really love is like a piece of cake and a glass of wine. Great. But if he's like, because like neither of those things fuss me. Like I don't drink alcohol and like I don't care for it. I don't ever fancy it. So if my partner was like, oh, shouldn't we just have a glass of wine? I'd be like, you absolutely have a glass of wine, but like I'm not, because that does nothing for me. And same with like cake might not be his thing or might be his thing or whatever. So it doesn't necessarily have to be those things, but maybe you sit down and have like, maybe it's a beer for him, or maybe it's like he prefers like having something savory as opposed to the cake. I don't know, but it doesn't always have to be like the exact same thing.
Yeah, agree. Next question. There have been lots of answers to posts recently suggesting that eating at maintenance for a few days a week around your period, etc., if you're struggling. My question is, how do you work out what maintenance is if you're only doing a short period like that, especially if weight is trending down over time? I seem to remember you talking a bit about a bit of trial and error when it comes to coming out of a deficit to see where maintenance sits, but there isn't any quote unquote time in this situation. Any advice on this? E.g., should I just go up 100 calories above the top end of my range?
That's probably quite a good target. I'm also more than happy to look at your numbers specifically. If you want to do a post and just tag me with like your weight, your steps, your calorie range at the moment, how quickly you're losing weight, then we can kind of estimate maintenance. Look, nobody's getting that right. Nobody is being like, oh, for 2 days I'm coming up to maintenance, and they're spot on with their maintenance targets. It just doesn't happen. Like it fluctuates so much. Like technically there'll be a bit of a change to maintenance if you're the week before your period anyway, because you'll be slightly like you're, oh my God, I had the most insane night sweats the other night, and I was like, what the hell? And I woke up, actually, do you remember the last time I came on the podcast? I was so stressed because my heating had just like, my floor was at
Oh
30
yeah,
degrees. I was
30
like, what the
degrees.
hell? Mad, right? And I thought that happened again. I got up and I was like, so mad. And then like all the heating was off, and I was like, what the hell? Anyway, then the next morning I got my period, so I was like, oh, it's probably just like, but the point being, like, some people have like this big elevation in heat before they start their period, or like at least like sometimes a couple of days beforehand as well. That heat comes from somewhere. And actually, I had a question about this with perimenopause recently, and I couldn't find like an exact answer, but the question was basically like, the hot flashes, like, do they burn more calories? And like the answer is yes, but like we don't know exactly how many more, and it probably depends on how many you're having and how hot you are and all this. But like heat doesn't come from nowhere. Like you require energy to produce heat. So yes, like it does. So there's like, if you're a perimenopausal woman and you're looking for a tiny, tiny silver lining to the annoying hot flushes, and there you go. Like you'll burn slightly more calories. But the same sort of thing can happen like before your menstrual cycle. My point being, back to maintenance, you're never going to know exactly. So I would probably, like, depends on what you want to do. You could come up to kind of like the top end of your range. If you want to be more erring on the side of caution, you could add 100 or so calories to that if you're not so fussed about being in a deficit at all. What I will say to caveat that, and this is very individual, like try that. And if it works for you, great. I know that the week before my period, if I come up by 200, 300 calories, it makes no difference to me whatsoever. Still really hungry, still quite moody, still, like have the exact same issues. It's just that now I'm not in a deficit. And like if fat loss was my goal, then I would probably just stay in the deficit, because actually what I found for me personally is it's a hard week no matter what. And if I bring my calories up a couple hundred calories, it actually doesn't really help me. Now, some people find that it takes the edge off for them, and they're like, oh no, actually, when I eat a little bit more that week, then I'm not as hungry and I can maybe fit in a few things that I'm really craving. Fine. What I find is that if I fit in a few things that I'm really craving those weeks, I actually just crave them more. So when people are like, oh, you could just have like a little fun size bag of Maltesers, I'm like, no, because then I just want the whole thing. And actually, yeah, those weeks I do have less willpower. And again, like, do I want to say the word willpower? Whatever. I find it harder to control myself. Like, I'm still in control, but I find it harder to control myself. Now, that would be putting myself in a position where it is harder to control myself because I've gone out and bought a load of chocolate, and then you have to control yourself with that. I just find it's not any harder for me just to be a little bit more disciplined and actually stick to the plan. And the kind of reassuring thing is I'm always like, look, if you still want to eat a whole cake next week when your period comes, have it. And I
Yeah.
just kind of like ease myself, and like, I'm not saying you can't have it, like, you have that whole cake, but right now you make quite bad decisions. And part of this is getting to know yourself, like, when am I most likely to make poor decisions? For me, it's like after 8 p.m. So I don't book, like, I don't book flights or holidays or like text my ex or whatever, like anything after 8 p.m. It's like, no, no, you can't do that. If you still want to do that in the morning, you crack on, you do that in the morning. But like after 8 p.m., you are the most likely to spend a load of money on crap, book flights somewhere, text your ex-partner, I don't know, like, order a load of crap that you don't need, overeat on stuff that you don't need to be overeating on after 8 p.m. Everybody is, right? You've had loads of decisions all day, you're tired, you've got decision fatigue, the day's catching up with you, whatever. Like, that's your kind of like time that that you're not going to make good decisions. So don't make decisions then. Just push the decision forward. I also don't make big decisions for like 2 or 3 days before my period, because I'm not as mentally resilient. I don't have as much perspective. And generally my mood is significantly lower. So I don't see things as clearly. And so I'm just like, anything that doesn't need to be a decision now, I'll just make it in 3 days.
Yeah. Do you know who that really, well, obviously it applies to everybody, but like if you have experience of working night shifts are dangerous, particularly payday night shifts, because I have spent so much money on nights before. Like when you go on break and you get your phone out and then you go on social media and an advert comes up for something. And like, I actually booked Sean some flights in a hotel for us to go to New York while I was on night shift. I was just like, fuck
Yeah,
it,
but
I'll
also,
just do it.
that one was good. I'm
Yeah,
excited
that
to
was good. And it
seriously.
is for our wedding anniversary. But like, yeah, I possibly would have made a different decision if it had been daylight hours. But yeah, that is just so true. But the other thing I would say about this, about eating around your period, is like, think about what you are choosing to eat already first and foremost. Like, are you getting the most out of your calories to feel full? Because I know for me, when I get cravings around my period, I'm so much more likely to go for like a chocolate bar first before I've eaten any fruit, before I've done anything else. And then if I want to get some actual nutrition in my day, I have to go over my calories to get that in, because I've already spent too much calories on the stuff that like I was craving. So like it can take work to unpick that or undo that, but try and do it the other way around. Think about, right, okay, how can I get my nutrition in? How can I get the most out of my calories first and foremost? And then at the end of the day, if you want a chocolate bar and it takes you 100, 200 calories over, have it. And actually, that's probably, for most people, those cravings are probably only going to last, a couple of days. So actually, if you're at maintenance for 2 days of the week and in a deficit for the rest of the week, overall, you're still in a deficit. So it's no stress.
Mm-hmm. I actually think that's a really good point as well, about don't have the thing that you're craving until you've hit the other things first, because you're much less likely to overeat on it. If you're
Mm.
like, oh, I'll have some, I don't know, chocolate because I fancy it now, and it's like lunchtime or something, and all you've had is like the breakfast bar. It's like, no, 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 no. Have some actual proper food first, and then in the evening, sit down, have a cup of tea, and be like, right, now that I've hit all my targets for the day, I do really fancy this. The other benefit of that is you enjoy things more when you put them off a little bit. when you're like, do you know what? I'm really looking forward to getting everything I need to do done, fueling myself throughout the day. And then I'm going to sit down in the evening. I'm going to switch off my social media, like I'm going to have a little bit of me time, I'm going to have a nice cup of tea, and I'm going to like really enjoy this chocolate that I've been looking forward to all day. Great. That's so much better than like sitting at work at your office being like, oh, I really crave some celebrations, and just picking at stuff and not really enjoying it. And you're halfway through doing something, you're on your laptop, and like you're not enjoying that food as much.
Yeah, agree. Another question?
Yeah.
I feel like this one might be quite deep.
Oh,
Um,
great. Am I
can
going
you
to cry?
possibly no? Can you possibly do a discussion around calm and emotional safety and the impact on eating?
Hmm.
There's not any other context to it than that. So
Okay, well, I'll bring in my own context. Uh, I definitely think if you don't, I find that if I don't feel calm, I really struggle to eat. Like recently with like personal things, like there's definitely an elevation in like cortisol kind of fight or flight response. And I noticed that it's very hard to eat when you feel like that, when you feel like you're on alert, when you feel like slightly anxious all the time. And like that makes it really hard to eat. So I would like you could even have, and if that's something you're struggling with, a bit of a calm down process before you have dinner. Like whether it's going out for a nice walk, whether it's a little bit of meditation. And by the way, meditation doesn't have to be like this really long thing that you don't understand, that you just say that you're not good at. It could just be like, I'm going to sit on my own just for 5 minutes. I'm going to put my hand on my chest so I can feel my heart. And that's not where my heart is, it's the other side. um, but point being, like, you're going to like have some kind of like, I'm just going to calm myself. I'm going to like regulate my breathing a little bit. And then you'll find that honestly, even doing that for like 2 minutes has such a big impact on your central nervous system, on the way that you feel, on how you can regulate yourself. And then you probably can go into dinner and actually enjoy it and make much more sensible choices. I don't know if that's exactly what you were asking. I just know that, like, for example, for me, that's something I've had to do recently. It's very hard to actually want to eat without kind of feeling a little bit sick if you're like on such high alert. And I hadn't really experienced that for a long time, but I actually remember another time that this happened, and I was absolutely starving. Um, and I was like just about to have lunch, and then I got a text from Kimberly, who was my old operations manager, and she like said that something went wrong, but it was like a really big. She was like, "I'm not sure if this has happened, but I think this might have happened," and it was like it would have been a huge fuck up, like massive, and like I couldn't eat anything. It was just, and then actually found out it didn't happen. It was fine, but it was like one moment I just really realized like, oh my god, it was literally went from being so physiologically hungry to no appetite whatsoever. I couldn't like you couldn't like force me to eat anything. So and all that happened was this like flood of stress, and then I was like, oh, okay, no, and then that
and
did
then
much.
it was fine. That's
Yeah,
it's such a horrible feeling when you feel so anxious or so stressed that you can't eat. It's not happened to me many times in my life, but the two times it has happened, once when my dad died, for like, I don't know, probably a good 4 weeks afterwards, I didn't eat properly because I was just in such a state of anxiety the whole time. And then the second time was when my ex-partner cheated on me with someone that I work with, which was great. I know. And I didn't eat for about 2 weeks, but then one day I was really hungry, so I ate a whole camembert and a whole French stick, and then I was back to eating then, and I was fine. But I think for some people it can go the other way as well. Like, I know that I've had times in my life where I have felt really emotionally and physically unsafe, and in those times food was actually like a port of safety for me. Like, it was the one, this sounds so deep, but it was like the one thing that was constant for me, that I knew I could have every day, that made me feel a bit better. Um, and both of those things are like two like extremes, aren't they? Both like two ends of the extremes.
it's
So
so interesting that like because you're right, certain forms of stress or emotional discomfort, like because there's a huge bracket there, will make you want to not eat at all because you almost it's like almost like you don't feel safe enough to eat, and there is actually like an evolutionary response to that, like because when you're eating you can't run away, You know, like it's almost like quite like a vulnerable thing to be eating because you can't, and especially in like, you know, you'd be usually like sat down kind of eating something, or like, you know, you stop to eat something, so you are actually quite vulnerable to prey. So I think that that's one of the reasons that like that stress response has such a strong impact there. But more so nowadays, it's like if you have more chronic levels of stress, often you'll eat because you want to avoid feeling something, right? While you're eating, you're distracted, you're doing something else, you know, like it feels good in the moment. You have this endorphin, serotonin, really, you know, like food makes you feel good in the moment. So that's what you're trying to do. And when you're doing that, you're often not thinking about the other things that are stressing you out or that are, you know, emotionally challenging at the time. I think most of the time the difference is more like the acute kind of like shock of finding out your partner's cheated on you or someone that you love's passed away or something like that, compared to like a more chronic stress. Like maybe you're just like unhappy in a relationship. It's not awful, but you don't want to leave or whatever. It's just like it's been going on for a long time, or you're not happy in your job, or there's something that's like chronically making you stressed out. I think that's like there's like a slight difference in those two.
Mm, agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you just have, like you said, you just have to find ways to regulate yourself differently. So whether that's choosing something else other than food to help you feel safe, you know, that could be like literally getting rid of people from your life, or you know, it doesn't have to be as big as people, but things from your life that make you feel that way. Or whether it's like Emma said, like doing a bit of like regulation just before you sit down to eat a meal, just to bring everything down a little bit and get yourself off the ceiling if you're feeling that really like heightened state of stress. It's like women won't give birth when they feel unsafe. Like lots of women will call triage when they, you know, because they're having really good strong contractions at home, regular and everything, and then they come to hospital, and because of like the stressful car journey and then walking into a hospital that smells funny and the bright lights, all of a sudden everything like slows down and goes away a bit because their body's like releasing adrenaline, and that, yeah, that will like slow down contractions. So, and also my dogs won't eat unless I'm in the room, and I think that's to do with a safe thing because they've got their head down in a bowl.
That's true. Yeah, when you're going to protect them.
Yeah.
Oh, there's something about horses in this as well. It's like, I'm going to need to look this up, but like, I think it's that horses always eat with like one foot up.
Oh, really?
Well, let me look. Okay, so why do horses eat with. The first one is why do horses eat poo?
My dogs eat poo all the time. It's so gross.
Mm. Um, oh, okay. There was some like uh this one just says balance, but I once read this big thing about like maybe it was not maybe it was made up. But it was more about like an evolutionary thing. It's like because they're like ready to kind of like move if they need to move, and it's quite like a vulnerable thing. But yeah, I think for most animals, like I guess including ourselves until relatively recently, like eating's quite a
Mm,
vulnerable time, especially if you're, you know, you're a dog and you've got your head down.
yeah,
Anyone could come up. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Shall we do one more?
Let's do one more. Yeah.
This is a funny one.
All right. Good.
Uh, have you ever done a wee in the shower?
Yeah. Have you?
Yeah, all the time.
Like,
Like,
is that?
are you even a person if you don't wee in the shower?
Yeah. I'm sorry, but anyone who says that they haven't is lying.
I just like, I don't know why you wouldn't. Like, it's a time saver, right? Sometimes I'll really need a wee, but I'm going to have a shower. So, like, obviously,
See, that is something I don't do. Like normally, because normally I wouldn't wee in the shower because I would have weed before. Like normally I'll wee before I go in the shower, so I wouldn't actually. But if I was in the shower and I found I needed a wee, obviously
then you do
on your
one.
own, like on your own in the shower. But yeah.
I'm not talking about golden showers. No, sometimes if I really need a wee before I have a shower, like I will wait to get in the shower to do it. Like because then it feels even nicer. But I just think, yeah, why wouldn't you? Like, you're literally in the
Because then
shower.
it feels even nicer. What?
Yeah,
Because you want
because
to keep rolling down your legs?
you not have to have pee rolling down your leg, but you know that feeling of like you're desperate for a wee, and it's like, oh,
Do you ever find that it's actually quite hard to pee standing up though? Because like you're in your head, especially as a woman, like you sit down to pee.
no, I
No?
don't think I've ever found that. No.
Okay then.
I
But
am
yeah,
unable to do a wild wee without weeing all over my feet, though.
oh, I'm pretty good at a wild wee.
Are you?
Yeah. hmm
Skills.
Yeah, you just have to make sure that the wind is blowing in the right direction or not, because
And that you're not
otherwise,
pushing it too hard, otherwise it comes out.
yeah, or otherwise something else comes.
It's everywhere. I've never done a poo outside, just to be clear.
I have.
Have you? Can you
And
tell us
actually,
the story?
like a life story for me, right? The first, when you're a kid and like the first time you realize that like life has consequences. My
Yeah.
whole story of that is based around doing a poo. And so we were on a family holiday and my dad's a skipper. So we were on a boat for some reason. I can't remember why, but anyway, it's always really awkward being on a boat because I can't remember if this boat even had like a toilet, or it must not have, because for some reason I had to poo off the side of the boat, right? And I think I was only like, I don't know how old I was. I want to say like 6 or something. But this is like one of my first memories of like life has consequences. And I was making such a big deal out of it, but also making myself like unwell by being like trying to hold in a poo, right? So then my mum was like, I'll give you, this is how long ago it was. She was like, I'll give you this £2 coin. When it was like a new thing, like I'd never seen one before. She's like, I'll give you this £2 coin if you do poo off the side of the boat. So I was like, the entrepreneur that I am, yes, I will. I will do the poo off the side of the boat, right? So I did. And then I was like on the boat playing with the £2 coin and it fell off the side of the boat, right? And I normally, when you're a kid, it's like you drop an ice cream and your parents will go get you another one, or even if it doesn't happen immediately, it's like, oh, it's okay because next time we stop, we'll get an ice cream, or we'll get one tomorrow or whatever. And I remember saying to my mum, like, I've dropped it, like I don't have it anymore. And she was like, well, that's what happens when you don't look after things. And and I'm sure that other things have happened similar, right? But I just that's like the one thing that's like stood out in my head of like, oh my god, life has consequences, and you need to look after things, and like your mum's not always just going to give you, because I think I expected her to be like, we'll find you another one, or like, don't worry about, like, when we get, like, sounds like I'm a spoiled child, but with like kids, like you normally do like, oh well, don't worry, there'll be another one, or like whatever. But she didn't say that. She was just like, well, look
That's
after
such a
yourself
good lesson.
then.
Did you do the poo?
Yeah, that's how I got the money in the first place.
Oh, so
So
you'd already done it.
I got the £2 and then I dropped it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is such a good lesson. And you don't sound like a spoiled kid. I think all kids are like that. They just you don't when you're that age, you don't have a concept of like where things come from or how much
Even
they cost really.
exactly, like, even looking back to being like young teenage years, and you're just like, oh, mum, can I have this? Or like, and I look at like because some of my mates now have like teenage kids, which is, I mean, not that many, but like pretty wild, right? And they just want everything. And you're like, God, you have no idea how much that
Yeah.
costs. Like, and I wish my parents had explained it more to me. Like, even if they were like, okay, well, you can have that, but like, if you had a job, that would be the equivalent of 5 hours of work, or like whatever it would have been. Like, I think just understanding that a little bit more, or even, and I really wish the schooling system was better in regards to that. Like, do you know what would have been interesting to know is like, where do you like, how do you think we have a house? What do you think of, like, even if it was just like, mum gets paid X amount, mortgages X amount, school clothes are this much, food this week is da da da. Like, would have just been like actually quite interesting rather than like just random numbers. And I think that's why I was never really interested in maths or anything at school, because I was like, I don't see a point to any of this. Whereas if someone had given a point to it, it's like, well, this is how you manage like your bills, or this is how like money works, or this is how expenses are, and actually those numbers meant something, then you're much more bought into like the process of it and be like, oh, I'm actually interested as to what we would have left at the end of the month, rather than just like, what's the
Mm.
answer to this sum?
What a
There you
great
go. And
story.
if the national curriculum people are listening, you're
Please
welcome.
take Emma's advice.
I mean, it's been a long time since I've been at school. Maybe it's completely different now.
I
Maybe
have
they
no
don't.
idea. It's also been a horribly long time since I've been at school.
Yeah. Maybe they don't do Sokotoa anymore. Maybe they actually teach like taxes and don't know.
They should teach how to invest, how mortgages work. Yeah.
What inflation is.
Yeah,
Basic stuff that you need to know. Yeah.
for sure.
All kids will be going home being like, we should invest in the S&P 500, Mum. And they'll be
Yeah.
like, what the hell is that? All right then. Well, that was very fun. Guys, if you're listening to this or watching this now on YouTube, hello. The next Commit 6 intake is about to start. And all the early bird spaces have gone, but there are still, I think at this point, about 40 something spaces left for this intake. It's probably the best intake that we ever will have done because of the mindset shift course that is aligning with this. And yeah, we're just really excited about attracting the right people for this one. And like, I'd rather have less of the right people and surround myself with them than the wrong people sign up. So if you are of a fuck average mindset and you want to sign up, head over to esgfitness.co.uk/commit. I was like, yeah, that's right. I'll put it in the show notes as well. And yeah, we would love to have you.
Excellent. I'm really excited for the mindset shift.
Good, me too. All right, bye.